Satanists want to recruit. We know that it's been going on for many years. This is not new, but their arrogance and their outwardness about the way they recruit is becoming unbelievable.
Recruiters will go out there into various high schools and draw kids into the system because they're very street smart, some of these Satanists, and they can draw these kids into it very seductively where their parents may not even know it.
Sometimes they'll simply suck them in through the local high schools, sex and drug parties. They may go to the local bus station, find the runaways down there, Skid Row, or they may come from very affluent families.
I've noticed that these kids are bored with society, they're bored with school, they're bored with some of the churches that are out there.
I have young people calling me regularly, telling me that they have been involved in some sort of animal mutilation sacrifice. And the reason why they say that they go out to these animal mutilation sacrifices is because they're provided with vodka or drugs, cocaine, or free sex. And they don't particularly like, as this one girl said to me, I don't really like to hear the squealing animals in the cemeteries when they do their rituals, but they give me free vodka.
Repeatedly you see the drug usage being used. Sometimes the high priest or the high priestess won't use drugs because they may not be able to have that mental, spiritual control over the people that are in the actual coven, but they will then give it to their members.
And so to cover up what I'd seen and what I'd been taking part in, I started taking drugs, which they provided. So that was another reason for staying at the coven. They were providing me heroin.
I believe that hate is necessary in a controlled way just as much as love is necessary. Most of the people that are in my group are professional people, they're business people, they're people that are from very responsible walks of life.
only international satanic religious institution fully recognized by the United States government.
I remember being tied up to a pole with this girl named Emily.
There was an explosion of daycare sex abuse scandals like the Kelly Michaels case in the last decade.
I remember playing the naked lady game.
The most notorious, perhaps the one that ignited them all, happened at the McMartin Preschool in Manhattan Beach, California.
Someone killed a horse in front of you?
Yeah.
Where?
That was at a farm. That was part of the scare tactics. You know, this could happen to your mom and dad if you tell about anything that's happened.
And who killed the horse?
Ray Bucky.
It began 10 years ago with a single accusation of child abuse against one teacher, Raymond Bucky.
I have a daughter who has massive evidence of being raped and being sodomized.
But it quickly grew.
More than 100 counts of trial with 208 counts of
until there were 7 defendants.
More than 300 charges.
And hundreds of charges.
I think adults have had a lot of influence on their children.
Raymond Bucky, his sister Peggy Ann,
Hi.
Their mother Peggy McMartin Bucky, grandmother Virginia McMartin, and 3 teachers were all charged with sexually abusing 18 children at the McMartin Preschool.
It was a prestigious school in the area. It had a waiting list. And
Kevin Cody, publisher of a local newspaper.
Virginia McMartin was the Manhattan Beach Woman of the Year 2 or 3 years prior to the investigations.
Witnessed the wave of sex abuse charges that washed over the entire beach community.
Do you know, altogether, including McMartin, how many schools in this area closed because of allegations of child abuse?
7.
And was anyone ever convicted?
No.
All right, we are ready for the jury.
Raymond Bucky and his mother Peggy were the only McMartin defendants to stand trial.
As to counts 3.
On January 18, 1990.
8, count 9, count 12.
After 124
13,
witnesses.
Count 14.
1,000
15,
pieces of evidence.
Count 56. Count 57.
And $15 million of taxpayers' money.
59.
The longest and most expensive criminal trial in U.S. history came to an end.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the very defendants not guilty.
This is all that's left of the McMartin Preschool. It was torn down in 1990. The children, the 3-, 4-, and 5-year-olds who said they were molested, are teenagers now.
It started out here in Manhattan Beach looking like an isolated incident. One mother noticed that her young son was having nightmares and difficulty sitting down and a redness on his bottom. Authorities would later conclude that her 2-year-old son had been sodomized. That was last summer. In the months since then, the number of possible victims have multiplied, to say the least.
Tonight, Virginia McMartin is in jail, along with some of her relatives and former teachers.
I think they were questioned by the older people until they finally said yes, agreed to it.
So you think you're just being framed, huh?
You darn tootin' I think we're being framed. I don't think it, I know it.
To obtain their silence, these people told the children that their parents would be harmed. And in order to back up that threat, small animals were actually slaughtered in the children's presence in order to frighten them into submission.
The psychological trauma that will result from having these people back out on the street, people who threaten the children's lives, is immense, as I'm sure you can imagine.
I think it is abundantly clear that the horrors of what we have learned to date, of what has occurred at that nursery school, has affected an entire generation of children.
They were physical, aggressive, harmful acts. I did see a reference to a large knife being drawn across the chest of one child, burying one child in a sandy area up to the chest, who had to get himself out by digging himself out with his arms. The administration of drugs, threats to kill generally, the placement of sharp foreign objects into vaginal areas, I believe turtles and rabbits being observed bleeding and then dying thereafter.
Believe children were abused not only at the McMartin Preschool, but also at other locations. They charged school children were allegedly taken off campus at times to be sexually assaulted.
My son told me that they did take the children away from the school to other locations, and they would tell him that our car broke down, we need to go into this house and make a phone call, and then they would parade the kids into a house to be sexually abused.
I remember being at what felt like an older, kind of almost Victorian type house. I remember there being more than one teacher or adults, and I remember there being multiple kids. I have memories that this 3-year-old little girl was being made to stand in front of people and have pictures taken of her when she was naked.
I know my daughter was taken around in the community. I mean, she showed me places that she was taken to that I never took her to. She didn't have a driver's license. She was 2.5. So it had to be the teachers. I asked my daughter, how did they take you in and out of the school? And she said, through the tunnels. Like, I'm supposed to know.
Police took action today in the ever-growing McMartin child molestation case. Manhattan Beach Police, together with investigators from the DA's office, conducted searches at 9 different locations early this morning.
Based on the continuing investigation, it would now appear that there are aspects of child pornography. Many of the children are now telling us that during the course of molestations that there were lights and cameras, which would, of course, then lead to distributing pornography for profit.
One aspect of the expanding investigation involves this woman, Catherine Wilson, the so-called queen of kiddie porn. Authorities want to find out whether any of the suspects in the McMartin Preschool case are linked to her operation. Photos used as evidence in the Wilson kiddie porn case are being compared to photos of children who complained about sexual abuse at the McMartin Preschool.
Have you actually found any pornography, printed or film material?
That is something I can't get into at this particular point of the investigation.
Okay.
We have heard it 100 times or more from children. The same things, the same games, the same descriptions.
From the beginning, the allegations heard in court have been horrific. The first child to testify, a 7-year-old boy, told of being sodomized and forced to play naked games.
My memory of the naked movie star game now is just us, the kids, being naked on a stage and them taking pictures of us. I remember there being more than one teacher or adults, and I remember there being multiple kids.
Seeing those defense attorneys, they were bastards. They ate the kids up and spit them out.
What we're left with at this point is that for 5 of the 7 defendants in the McMartin case, the evidence is so slim that it does not go beyond the mere accusation.
Come on, baby. Excuse us, folks, please.
It's still to be out.
I think Ira Reiner's chicken.
Right. The message that's being sent to child molesters is that if there are children that are 2, 3, 4, or 5 years old, that there's absolutely no reprisals that will be brought against those pedophiles or child molesters. Those kids are fair game.
I'm really mad, but I'm gonna have to live with it.
Do you have any fear that he might ever bother you again?
No, not me, but I'm afraid he'll hurt other children.
It's possible that these children were molested, and it may not have been proven that the defendants were the cause, or if someone else was. Whether I believe he did it and whether it was proven are very different.
The parents have to live with this, and there's nothing that I can say or anyone else can say to make them feel better. We did the best job we could do with the information that was given to us.
One child sat on the stand for 15 days being racked and abused by a defense attorney, and what did he get? Not guilty. So why should you tell?
I consider myself an objective scientist, and I use scientific method. The children said that they were taken into a tunnel underneath the school and into a room, and there is where they were molested as part of what came out to be satanic rituals.
We are firmly convinced that the children were indeed molested. This is much too important a case. Far too much has gone into it for far too long, and the charges are much too serious to allow it to hang out there with such a great question mark. We've looked at the evidence very carefully, and we are firmly convinced that the children were indeed molested.
They take your trust and they suck you in, and then they take your most prized possession and try to dement it.
When the children started talking, they started talking about robes and candles.
They described an Episcopal church. And once they started narrowing that down, you could see that it had to be satanic. It's very important in satanic religions to have a priest because they truly do believe in power. The difference only between Catholicism and the Episcopal religion is almost done. They both use wine, they both use bread, and so on. The truth about Satanism is they truly do use blood, and they mix it with urine, and then they also use the real meat, the real flesh. This is what makes Satanism true, and this is what 1,200 molested kids in the city of Manhattan Beach have told the Sheriff's Department, and it's an outrage that we are where we are with this case, and these poor unprotected kids that have, that's a third of the school system in the city of Manhattan Beach has been molested. We have 8 preschools closed here. This is the child molestation capital of the world. We have more preschools closed in this city than any city this side of Detroit, and I'm not picking on Detroit.
We will not take no for an answer, and even though we may not be getting answers tonight from the District Attorney's Office, we will be looking for them in the future.
I remember being tied up to a pole with this girl named Emily.
There was an explosion of daycare sex abuse scandals like the Kelly Michaels case in the last decade.
I remember playing the naked lady game.
The most notorious, perhaps the one that ignited them all, happened at the McMartin Preschool in Manhattan Beach, California.
Someone killed a horse in front of you?
Yeah.
Where?
That was at a farm. That was part of the scare tactics. You know, this could happen to your mom and dad if you tell about anything that's happened.
And who killed the horse?
Ray Bucky.
It began 10 years ago with a single accusation of child abuse against one teacher, Raymond Bucky.
I have a daughter who has massive evidence of being raped and being sodomized.
But it quickly grew.
More than 100 counts of child with 208 counts of
until there were 7 defendants.
More than 300 charges.
And hundreds of charges.
I think adults have had a lot of influence on the children.
Raymond Bucky, his sister Peggy Ann.
Hi.
Their mother, Peggy McMartin Bucky, grandmother Virginia McMartin, and 3 teachers were all charged with sexually abusing 18 children at the McMartin Preschool.
It was a prestigious school in the area. It had a waiting list. And
Kevin Cody, publisher of a local newspaper.
Virginia McMartin was the Manhattan Beach Woman of the Year 2 or 3 years prior to the investigations.
Witnessed the wave of sex abuse charges that washed over the entire beach community.
Do you know, altogether, including McMartin, how many schools in this area closed because of allegations of child abuse?
7.
And was anyone ever convicted?
No.
All right, we are ready for the jury.
Raymond Bucky and his mother Peggy were the only McMartin defendants to stand trial.
As to counts 3.
On January 18, 1990.
8, count 9, count 12.
After 124
13,
witnesses.
Count 14.
1,000 pieces of evidence.
Count 56. Count 57.
And $15 million of taxpayers' money.
59.
The longest and most expensive criminal trial in U.S. history came to an end.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the very defendants not guilty.
This is all that's left of the McMartin Preschool. It was torn down in 1990. The children, the 3-, 4-, and 5-year-olds who said they were molested, are teenagers now. The defendant, Ray Bucky, and his family lost their home and moved to a town just south of here. It's all over, and yet it's not.
Are you still angry?
Yeah, I'm still angry. I don't make that a part of my life, you know, to dwell on that and say, you know, my God, I gotta somehow get my revenge. But I'm angry, you know, very angry. It shouldn't go on. That kind of stuff should not go on. It shouldn't happen.
I want people to know that it did go on and that it still does and that it probably still will go on.
Brian Stafford was one of the star witnesses against Ray Bucky.
It mattered to me, of course, what the jury said, but I knew in my heart that no matter what they said, I knew my story and I knew the truth.
At one point, he spent 16 days on the witness stand.
I'd really expected a guilty verdict, and I was pretty upset, yeah. I think we all were.
Probably the most, not horrifying, but most vivid anger that I have is these older people taking advantage sexually of small kids. It's strange, it's upsetting, and it's just, that really got on my nerves. I had a hard time dealing with that.
Seeing it happen to someone else?
So having it happen to me, having him, take advantage of me sexually as a small child, it really just kind of shocked me, but I knew it happened.
She looks so little. She's so little, and I don't know how anybody could hurt such a little kid.
Mary Mae Chiaffi's daughter, Elizabeth, was 3 when she attended the McMartin Preschool. She's 13 now.
What's the Naked Lady Gang?
I don't really remember what we did. I just remember that that's what it was called, and that we would all be naked, and the girls and boys would stand in lines, and they'd take pictures of us while we were on stage. And I remember tunnels. They were kind of like a subway tunnel, but it was like a circular tunnel, and there were lamps, like the oil lamps, every so often, and it was a dark tunnel, and there were pictures of the devil on the wall.
And the tunnel went right on across, all the way over to this wall.
The kids talked about passageways under the school and rooms under the school.
Jackie McGauley says her daughter was also abused at McMartin and also mentioned tunnels.
The tunnel went in like this.
10 years later, she and a private investigator are still digging for proof.
We were probing all over the school trying to find some evidence of tunnels, and it was like finding a needle in a haystack, really.
In 1985, the district attorney looked for tunnels at the site but found no sign of them.
And why do you think that you were able to find something that the prosecutors couldn't find?
The tunnels were actually under the school building. The prosecutors came in about 2 or 3 days and lifted tile, and they didn't see any indication that there was any break in the floor, and that's all they did.
This was the wall, the west wall.
After the acquittals, Ted Gunderson helped Jackie McGauley
The backhoe went straight down about
lead an excavation at the McMartin site. They say the dig revealed that tunnels once existed under the school.
It was about almost a 50-foot tunnel.
When you found these tunnels, they weren't actual tunnels. They weren't intact at the time.
They'd been filled.
How were they filled?
We never could figure out how they were filled, but I know it was done very professionally. There's artificial fill here. It's foreign to the other soil that's in the native soil that's in this area.
And what do you think that tunnel was used for?
Well, the children said that they were taken down into the tunnel and brought up into this triplex next door, and then they were placed in cars and taken out into the communities and prostituted.
Does that seem possible to you?
I would say it's possible. We found the tunnels.
At the McGauley home, more reminders of the McMartin nightmare.
Where did these come from?
Play yard.
These were toys that were actually in the play yard? Mm-hmm. Is that hard, though, for your daughter to see parts of that school in her own backyard?
Well, she lived on the school pretty much for a month while we were doing the project. So like I said before, I think we worked through all of that.
We had to sleep down there at night with the kids.
This is the sign from the school? Where is that now?
We've got it in storage.
What's the significance of holding on to all of this?
A lot of kids were called liars. A lot of kids don't feel that they can hold their heads up. They don't feel like they can talk about what happened and deal with their problems. There's a lot of problems associated with what happened at the school. I don't care about the trial. I don't care about the defendants. I do care about the kids.
What good does this do, though?
To hold on to the sign, what good does it do to hold on to the sign? It's just there. I'm not really holding on to it.
Just as there are families with strong feelings about the McMartin case, there are those with serious doubts.
There's no case. The case should never have gone to trial.
Newspaperman Cody covered the McMartin trial and says the real culprits in the case were the social workers that investigated the early McMartin complaints.
In my opinion, the therapist led the kids into making these false disclosures.
Do you think those kids were abused?
There is no evidence presented, to my mind, that the kids were abused.
I mean, I don't know how many times over the years I've thought, well, maybe they really did. Maybe they did brainwash our kids, and this is all just a bunch of baloney, and we'll just wake up from this bad dream. But the reality, I don't think that's the reality.
Is there any question in your mind it happened?
No, I know what happened.
Is it possible at all, when you look back now, that some of these memories you have are memories that the therapist told you about, that may not be your own memories?
For me, no, there's no doubt. People will try and convince you that, hey, this didn't happen to you, look at this, they told you that. It's simply not the truth. And it's, you know, the topic gets old. That's what happened and that's what I said. And you believe me or not, it's fine, but I'm going to still say it to this day.
Sinister aspects of magic towards the darker aspects, primarily because it gives them either a vicarious thrill or an excuse for their own sexual abnormalities. So there's nothing wrong with that, providing they do not harm another. We're not evangelical in the sense that we try to push it on other people, but we are here as an access point so that people can reach out to us. We never refuse any inquiries at all.
3 years on, Bray did refuse to be interviewed and threatened legal action when asked to explain his part in the current promotion of Satanism.
We're being filmed from the inside, gentlemen. If you look through there, there's a Sanyo video camera being aimed at us.
We wanted to question Bray about his publication, The Lamp of Thoth, which has carried want ads for dead bodies, articles advocating sacrificial murder, and is the platform for Michael Aquino's new British recruiting drive. Bray called the police to hold us at bay, while he and his staff, in Halloween disguise, made their escape.
Mr. Bray, we'd like to talk to you about the business you conduct and about the kinds of activities you promote. We'd like to talk to you about articles promoting murder, witchcraft, advertisements calling for dead bodies. There are many people who get into this disgusting business who wouldn't do so without you, Mr. Bray. What a pathetic display.
Bray makes light of the dangers of Satanism, but some would say it is dangerous in any circumstances. One ex-Satanist now lectures nationally on what she calls the doorway to danger.
Maybe because you're curious. There may be some of you wondering what doorway to danger is all about.
Audrey Harper says she was once a prisoner of fear, a recruiting agent for a coven which practiced child abuse and human sacrifice.
I think it's a far bigger problem. I think we're only touching the tip of it. When you realise that all these places are self-governing, they can do what they like. They attract homosexuals, they attract lesbians, they attract paedophiles because they can get away with it. Because the covens are so secret, even the satanic temples are secret. They can shift around. If they think they've been rumbled, they just go to another building. So it is a big problem.
But are we talking about just a few people in isolated parts of the country?
No, we're not. We're talking, it is nationwide.
In a year-long investigation, we've catalogued more than a score of recent, serious cases with clear evidence of satanic ritual, abuse or crime. Some of the victims are being counselled by the Reverend Kevin Logan.
In counselling, I have seen some terrible practices. I've heard some really grueling, really nasty things that have happened to youngsters, to children at puberty, for instance. A girl having to have sex on the altar, the act of initiation into Satanism itself. Children having to eat feces and to drink blood. And stomach-churning, horrible things that these Satanists get up to. And the effect that this has on these young lives.
Earlier this year, Nottingham was the scene of one of the biggest and certainly one of the most gruesome child abuse cases in British history, involving 36 members of one family.
We've got masses of these drawings.
As they worked on the case, social workers, led by Judith Dawson, came to believe there were satanic influences at work.
The sort of things that the children were saying were beyond the sort of things that they'd heard before. They were different, they were more bizarre, and they were horrific. You ask the children...
When the 23 child victims were made wards of court, the judge also accepted that the children, from babes in arms to 10, had suffered incest and sodomy in the course of satanic rituals. The victims' stories are confirmed by a family member who stumbled across a satanic ceremony by accident.
I just walked in out of the blue, and I just sort of seen all these masks, all these wigs and candles lit and everything. There was a cross on the floor, there was a cross on the wall inside the corner. There was also a sheep there involved. The sheep had been cut, and the children was made to drink sheep's blood. And it just turned my stomach over.
In court, 10 people were sent to prison for a total of 150 years. But there was hardly any mention of Satanism. The police say they heard the stories, but couldn't prove the satanic connection.
I accept there is the satanic abuse of children is no doubt a reality. I haven't personally experienced it, but I accept it as a reality. Unfortunately, in this particular case of these particular children, although they were habitually and horrendously abused, that abuse was not controlled by any satanic cult.
Until now, police and social workers in Nottingham have been at loggerheads. But today, after we'd passed on information from our files, a new team of police and social workers have begun to reinvestigate the satanic aspects of this distressing Midlands case.
Situations.
This is the self-portrait,
Yes.
self-picture.
In London, Natalie, now 15, endured 10 years of 3 satanic rituals every week. She's never spoken of it before.
The star in the circle, what was on the floor, us kids used to stand in. And the lady who used to sort of like be in charge was at the front on the altar. And the other people used to come in black robes with hoods, and used to come in, you know, chanting. And they went round the circle, and then an animal would be killed.
Natalie's mother knew nothing of her daughter's ordeal. Natalie was living with her grandmother at the time, and she was one of the abusers. 2 years ago, Natalie broke free from the coven to be reunited with her horrified and now guilt-stricken mother.
She was made pregnant, and the child was allowed to grow to a certain age, and then they aborted her baby, and on a sacrificial table they sacrificed the live-born child, not fully developed. What people call a fetus, but as a mother I call him a child from day one.
Those appalling allegations of ritual murder are now being investigated by the police. Charges of child sex abuse against those involved have been suspended, pending a full investigation into the child's satanic revelations.
They used to talk about Lucifer. They used to prepare and be there. And they used to say it was for him. And I thought he was a normal person, you know, just another person, you know, who was there. But now I know, well, that he was a spirit or something.
It was an evil spirit.
Yeah. Well, they were all evil, weren't they?
Hear now the legacy of the priesthood of Set. In the Diabolicon of the Age of Satan is recounted the primeval sundering of the cosmos from mindless
And it's precisely that evil spirit that Aquino and his wife honor and invoke as he ordains their first British high priest.
consecration with one who is now to be ordained
David Austin, who's never been accused of any crime, is an ex-member of the National Front and now a chef.
His high priest upon earth, name you to our fellowship.
He's been a Satanist for 20 years and will now head the Temple of Set in Britain on behalf of the Aquinos.
And of beauty.
But in San Francisco, we discovered that Michael Aquino is not all he seems. For a start, he's a lieutenant colonel in the US Army and a specialist in psychological warfare, holding a top-secret military security clearance.
Army investigators here at the Presidio base in San Francisco have now formally accused him of ritually abusing young children from the base's daycare center. Indeed, one young girl says she was horribly abused by both Michael and Lilith Aquino at their nearby home.
A U.S. Army chaplain made an accusation of child molestation centering on us at the Presidio of San Francisco at a time when my wife and I were living 3,000 miles away in Washington, D.C.
But we have a copy of the police report, and the child appears to have identified you.
That's not true.
But as the police report shows, and the Aquinos know full well, the victim of that attack did identify them both as her abusers, to her parents, to her therapist, and to the army. Some of that ritualistic abuse is alleged to have taken place at the Aquinos' home at 2430 Leavenworth Street near the Presidio base. What's more, since that original disclosure, at least 5 other children have made identical allegations.
Well, all I can say is that we have discussed this regularly with the CID, and we have not been told of a single other child that has made such a supposed identification at all.
Well, we've been told a couple of days ago that 5 more children have since disclosed.
By whom?
By this mother, that's who. Her children were amongst the 5.
They were taken to a daycare center where Michael Aquino and several other adults molested them. They did rituals. They wore robes. There was chanting. There were candles. He sodomized my children. He made them do all kinds of things, I guess. And they've also told the Army investigators that they'd been in his house, and they disclosed what the inside of his house looked like.
Those who investigate satanic crime can face frightening consequences. Lawyer Cynthia Angel tried to subpoena Michael Aquino for a child custody case after 2 more children alleged he'd abused them. Within days, she was kidnapped.
A stranger stepped into my car, pointed a gun at me, and told me to drive outside of town. I drove out of town, was shown a picture of a naked infant. I listened to a tape recording. There were infants crying, children crying, and adults chanting. The insinuation certainly was that these children and these adults were involved in some sort of satanic ritual. I was told repeatedly during this drive that should I tell anyone what I see or tell anyone what I hear or keep investigating the case that I had been investigating, that I would be killed.
What about the suggestion that this lawyer was taken out into the desert at gunpoint?
Well, that's asinine in a nutshell. We don't take anybody anywhere at gunpoint. We don't threaten anybody.
Well, I'm not suggesting that you did it personally, but as a result of taking up this case, she says that she was taken out and threatened and played obscene tapes.
Well, what is the...
Well, who did it? I mean, who
is supposed to have done this?
Who's supposed to have done this to her?
Well, she believes it was done on your behalf.
Oh, that's stupid.
It's absolutely untrue.
Just ridiculous. It's that kind of stuff. It's that kind of stuff that is causing all the misery.
And it's a witch hunt in the classical sense, just as the witch hunts that took place here in England and in Salem, Massachusetts in the United States.
Aquino is now back in America to face the military music, leaving his satanic church established in Britain. Dale Griffiths is a former police chief who for 17 years has investigated satanic crime. He has no doubt of the threat it poses.
I would say to my counterparts in England, ladies and gentlemen, don't assume the ostrich effect. Don't take your own Judeo-Christian backgrounds and use it. It's not what you believe. That's not important. Remember what they believe. And they are dangerous.
Protect her, Lord, from all the darkness and the evil of Satan and those who follow him.
If you have been involved in Satanism and need counseling or advice, a confidential helpline manned by specialist counselors is open until midnight. The number is 021-631-3080. That's 021-631-3080.
Preschool in Manhattan Beach, California. The scene, it is alleged, of one of the biggest and most bizarre cases of sexual abuse of children in anyone's memory. Today, nearly 5 years after the school closed down, the case against the people who ran it has finally gone to the jury. Good evening, I'm Ted Koppel, and this is Nightline. It's the longest and most expensive criminal trial in U.S. history, and almost since the beginning there have been suggestions that it never needed to take place. That's our story tonight.
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
It may be, when all is said and done, when the jury in the McMartin Preschool case has sifted through the more than 50,000 pages of trial transcripts, it may be that there will be one or more findings of guilt. It may be, in other words, that the legal process produces the conclusion that some little children actually were sexually abused. But it is doubtful that anyone will conclude that the way this trial was handled and covered by the media reflects much credit on either U.S. journalism or the U.S. legal system. Innocent people have had their reputations smeared and their lives turned upside down. Very young children who may or may not have been sexually abused have certainly been traumatized by endless hours of relentless examination and cross-examination in pretrial and courtroom hearings. Whatever else will be said about the McMartin case, it will never be cited as a proud example of our criminal justice system. Here's the background from Nightline correspondent James Walker.
This is the McMartin Preschool where the sexual abuse allegedly took place. These pictures were taken in January 1984, just days before the school was closed. It is located in an upper middle-class suburb of Los Angeles called Manhattan Beach. What made this case so sensational, so gruesome, was the accusation that 41 youngsters over a 6-year period had not just been sexually molested, but had also been forced to participate in satanic rites and pornographic pictures. There were also charges that to keep the children quiet, animals had been mutilated before their eyes. To add to the sensationalism, the 7 people arrested were not only pillars of the community, they were also responsible for the children's welfare. 3 generations of McMartins were arrested. Grandmother Virginia, daughter Peggy McMartin Bucky, her son Raymond Bucky, his sister Peggy Ann Bucky, as well as 3 teachers. At their arraignment in April 1984, the prosecutor said the defendants were so dangerous they should be jailed without bail. 5 of them were. The parents of the children were incensed.
I want them out of society forever. They should never, ever be allowed to be with other children or anybody else, for that matter.
The defendants faced more than 300 counts of sodomy, rape, and oral copulation. The evidence of abuse was largely developed by social worker Key McFarland, who used puppets to get the children who were between the ages of 2 and 6 to reveal what had happened. Babette Spittler was one of the defendants. A teacher at the school, she was charged with molestation and jailed for 2.5 months before the charges were dropped. She says McFarland brainwashed the children.
She had no proof of anything when she interviewed any of those kids. But she didn't assume that anybody was innocent. She assumed we were all guilty.
But the children in the interviews said that they had been...
Do they really? Or are the puppets saying something happened after they'd been questioned and questioned and questioned.
They met with me for an hour, and they were gone out of my life and I out of theirs. The concept that somehow magically this could have turned them into children who came to believe that they were raped and sodomized is an incredible one to me.
In June 1984, the preliminary hearing began. Its purpose, to decide if enough evidence existed to bring the 7 to trial. 41 children were supposed to testify. 13 did, in what one defense lawyer described as a relentless grinding of their testimony. This couple's 6-year-old daughter testified for 4 difficult days. Just the courtroom setting itself, they say, bothered their child.
The courtroom is a very intimidating place, and when the child's in there, they see 7 defendants, 7 attorneys, which adds up to 14 bad guys in their eyes, and maybe 2 people on their side plus a parent. That's very imbalanced and frightening for the child to see that.
Anytime a child testifies as to molestation, it's exceedingly emotional and damaging evidence. You're just going to have to give it full swing through cross-examination.
The preliminary hearing, which lasted 18 months, ended with a stunning development. While Raymond Buckey and his mother were held for trial, charges against the other 5 were dropped for lack of evidence. The second shocker came days later when 2 members of the prosecution asked to be taken off the case. Glenn Stevens claimed there was no evidence. He later sold his story to a Hollywood producer. In April 1987, 4 years after the first accusations of child abuse, the trial began. Ray Buckey pleaded not guilty to 81 counts of child molesting, his mother to 21 counts. In February 1989, after spending 5 years in jail, Ray Buckey was released on bail. 9 children testified at the trial. For some, it was their 6th description of the alleged abuse. 4 other children declined. Their parents felt they were too fragile to go on. Throughout it all, the Buckeys remained adamant about their innocence.
Did you ever molest any of those children?
Never. Through when I'm very nervous, I probably have said some things that are not quite correct, and I'll grant it and I'll admit that.
Including Mr. Buckey, whether or not you molested children in this case?
No, Miss Rubin, I know that I did not molest children ever in my life.
The trial has become a marathon. It's cost so far over $15 million, the most expensive criminal court case in U.S. history. It's generated over 50,000 pages of transcripts and over 1,000 pieces of evidence. 124 witnesses have testified. Why has it gone on for so long? Defense attorneys say the case has been out of control from the start, from the moment the prosecution filed over 300 counts against 7 defendants.
I think you have to view the nature of the case as pled by the district attorney. It's gigantic. It's completely unwieldy. No one knows how to deal with a case of this size. Because of that, the length of the case is dragged on and dragged on.
The parents of the McMartin children who testified blame the defense for the delays. For example, in 1985, during the preliminary hearing, 10-year-old Brian spent 16 days on the witness stand, 15 and a half being grilled by the defense. In 1988, during the trial, Brian spent 6 days on the stand, 5 and a half taken up by the defense. A jury of 12 men and women will now decide the innocence of Ray Buckey and his mother. They will have to sort out difficult questions such as how, for example, the children's compelling story of abuse could go on for so long without anyone noticing. But beyond what happens to the Buckeys, this case has also turned into a trial of the legal system itself, of the rights of defendants to a fair trial at the expense of children who have been repeatedly questioned and badgered about sexually intimate details in a case that has gone on now for 6 years. I'm James Walker for Nightline in Los Angeles.
When we come back, we'll talk with the dean of a California law school. He has been following the McMartin case for most of the past 6 years. We'll be talking with a Los Angeles television critic who accuses the media of what he calls knee-jerk hip shooting in covering the story. And with a former prosecutor of child abuse cases who now trains others in how to deal with the issue. Gerald Ullman is dean of the Santa Clara Law School in Santa Clara, California. A former federal prosecutor, he's been closely following the McMartin case since it began. He's with us now from our affiliate, KGO's bureau in San Jose, California. Joining us in our Los Angeles bureau is Howard Rosenberg, television critic for the Los Angeles Times. Mr. Rosenberg has been outspoken in expressing his concern over media coverage of the McMartin case. And with us from Richmond, Virginia, is Jim Peters. As a prosecuting attorney in Washington State, He dealt with more than 30 child abuse cases. He is now senior attorney at the National Center for Prosecution of Child Abuse. Howard, because I would like to begin with this in the macro sense, the broadest possible sense, let's talk about mass media coverage of the case. What's wrong with it?
Well, I think, you know, the media, when confronted by a preponderance of information about a suspect from one side, frequently tends to do more than just report that information. They tend to very quickly become converts. And I think that's really what happened in the McMartin case in the early days. There was like this hysterical atmosphere, I think, that the media contributed to. A lot of it was on local newscasts out here. Some of it even on the network, on a 2020 segment, for example, that I can recall. You know, the segment just all but indicted these people and almost convicted them and hanged them ahead of time, even before the trial. It was appalling. They threw in a couple of allegedlys, but it hardly balanced the kind of accusatory tone of the reporting. By the time the piece was over, you know, saying these people were allegedly guilty had about the same kind of impact as saying that Dr. Mengele was an alleged war criminal. It just wasn't balanced out.
Mr. Ullman, for some reason or another, the jury in this case was never sequestered. That is, it was, I gather, always able, if it wanted to watch television, listen to the radio. For all we know, even now they are not sequestered. They could be watching this program tonight. Isn't it inevitable that the kind of coverage in this case is going to have an impact on a jury?
I think that's quite likely, but I don't see how you could sequester a jury for 2.5 years and isolate them from their family and friends and associates. The burdens on this jury are just incredible in terms of having their lives turned upside down for 2.5 years. I think that is beyond what we should ask any jury to endure.
But you are suggesting that somehow one could have known at the very beginning of this trial that it was going to run longer than any trial in the history of U.S. criminal proceedings.
I think this was all foreseeable right from the beginning. And
because?
Because the case was overcharged, plain and simple. And I think it was done deliberately for political reasons, to advance the political career of the prosecutor who initiated this case.
When you say overcharged, what do you mean?
I mean that to take any case and charge 300 counts, 42 victims, and put it all into one case is just more than the system can digest. It's just biting off more than the system can chew. The case could have been broken up into smaller parts. It didn't all have to go to trial in one piece with 7 different defendants and 300 counts.
Could the judge, should the judge in this case have just said to the prosecution, you're going overboard, I want this thing reduced, I want half a dozen charges brought rather than 300 charges brought? Was that within his jurisdiction?
It was. A motion for severance could have been granted by the judge to carve up the case, to separate some of the defendants and try them separately, and to proceed with the case in smaller bits and pieces.
Now, Mr. Peters, talk to me for a moment about these children. Have we learned anything over the course of this trial in terms of how youngsters who may or may not have been sexually abused, I mean, we still don't have a verdict in this trial after all the 5 years that we've been talking about it. Do we have better ways of handling this issue than we did at the beginning of this trial?
Yes, Ted, I think that we clearly do. And I'm not in a position to talk about this case or the victims in this case, but clearly since 1984, things have changed for the better, I think, both from the standpoint of advocating on behalf of victims and certainly people who are representing defendants, I think, are quite a bit more attuned to understanding these cases and dealing with them, not just because of McMartin, but because there's been a heightened public awareness about the issue of sexual abuse, and these cases have come before the courts at a much greater rate than ever before in history in the last 5 years.
The McMartin case, in point of fact, almost started an avalanche of these kinds of cases and of charges being brought. There really are a great many similarities between the old witch hunts, I mean, I'm talking about literally the witch hunts a few hundred years ago, and what happened here.
Well, one of the big differences between the witch hunts of a few hundred years ago is there weren't any witches. And certainly, I disagree with you that the McMartin case started an avalanche of cases. I was involved in trying child abuse cases in the late 1970s, and the McMartin case is a unique case. It's an aberration, but I don't think it started any avalanche at all. I disagree with that.
All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I'd like to have each of you draw some conclusions on what the McMartin case has taught us and where we might be able to go legally in terms of media coverage and also in terms of how to handle these youngsters. We'll continue our conversation in a moment. And we're back with Gerald Ullman and Howard Rosenberg and Jim Peters. Mr. Ullman, is anyone going to pay any price once this trial is finally over? The prosecutors whom you charged with excessive zeal and political ambition, is anything going to happen to them? The judge who may not have handled this trial with quite the competence that might have been desired, anything going to happen to the judge? Are there any consequences, in other words, when you have what everyone seems to regard as a pretty lousy trial?
Well, the prosecutor who initiated the trial is gone. He was defeated for election in 1984, and the prosecutor who is currently in charge of the case actually succeeded in trimming the case somewhat. I think the case would have gone on for 5 years if he hadn't had the political courage to dismiss the case totally against 5 of the defendants. In terms of the judge and the other participants, I think there's plenty of blame to go around, but I would hope that we won't spend a lot of time in recrimination, but start looking for ways that this kind of trial can be avoided in the future. I think we need to develop ways within the criminal justice system of isolating the mega trial, assigning it to judges and prosecutors who are experienced in moving these cases along, spend more time trimming the case in advance. And unfortunately, the case is now being used as a vehicle to make changes in the system that I think will make it even more difficult to control these kinds of cases in the future.
Give me a very quick for instance, and then I want to go on to
Well,
media
for
coverage.
instance, we have another criminal justice initiative coming up on the ballot in California in which it's proposed to make preliminary hearings much shorter by using hearsay evidence to allow direct indictment to go directly to trial. I think these are the tools we have within the system to prune cases and get them into shape before trial. And I think it would be silly to change those procedures when the risk of that change is to make trials even longer.
Howard Rosenberg.
I disagree with that.
Who does?
That's Jim Peters.
Go ahead, Jim.
I disagree with the thought that by allowing for direct indictment, it's going to make for longer trials. I came from a state, Washington, where direct indictment occurs every day, and having prosecuted many child abuse cases in that state from 1977 through 1987, I never did a case that lasted longer than 3 weeks.
Explain for me quickly, what is meant by direct indictment?
That is where the prosecutor makes a determination that he or she believes there is probable cause, takes it before a judge with an affidavit setting forth that probable cause, and instead of engaging in a lengthy preliminary hearing, as occurred in the McMartin case, I understand it lasted 18 months, that finding is made by a judge in a much more simplified manner and cuts down, as a matter of fact, on the length of proceedings, not lengthens it.
I'd ask you to consider what would have happened if McMartin had gone directly to trial on an indictment, on 300 counts, 42 victims, 7 defendants. The case would be half over at this point. 5 innocent people would have been subjected to a 4 or 5 year trial. At least the preliminary hearing in this case succeeded in culling out a lot of the charges that were unfounded.
Well, sir, neither you nor I know whether those 5 people were innocent. The judge at the preliminary hearing who heard the evidence bound them over for trial. It was the prosecutor, the new prosecutor in Los Angeles, who made the determination not to proceed. We don't, either one of us, know whether they are guilty or innocent.
The prosecutor himself, in dismissing those charges, indicated they were probably innocent. He did not have sufficient evidence to proceed to trial to convict them.
All right,
Well,
Mr. Ullman, Mr. Peters,
hold
on.
They are, in fact, innocent.
I'm afraid what we're going to have to conclude at this point that we're going to stop insofar as our discussion of the legal ramifications of this case are concerned. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'll be talking with Howard Rosenberg about some of the media implications of this case. We'll continue our conversation in a moment. And continuing our conversation now with Howard Rosenberg of the Los Angeles Times. Let's pick up on Mr. Ullman's characterization of the politically ambitious prosecutors. What would you have had, most particularly the local media in Los Angeles, do when quite clearly there's a lot of oil being thrown on the fire every day here? You want them to keep saying, well, it's just being thrown on the fire by politically ambitious prosecutors.
No, it's not exactly what they reported, it's the tone. I mean, there was like an hysterical tone to much of the reporting and an accusatory tone to much of the reporting. And I don't think it's something you can just isolate, with McMartin. I think, if anything, the McMartin case was an extension of and dramatized the way we in the media, and especially television, because of its emphasis on pictures, cover a lot of stories, especially crime stories. I mean, a lot of it has to do with just the way we sort of cavalierly, I think, smear reputations and play loosely with reputations. I mean, one way it's done, forget about people who are indicted, but it's done just showing people on television being apprehended. We now have we have live drug busts. We have almost nightly on the local news scenes of people being led away in handcuffs. We don't know the ultimate disposition of those cases. For all we know, once they get to the police station, these people are freed because of lack of evidence, but the stigma through the pictures lives on indefinitely.
All points well taken, Howard, but given what you know to be the exceedingly competitive nature of the relationship among local stations on the local level and among the networks on the national level, is there anything that you feel can be done about that, or is likely to be done about that?
I'd like to say we've learned our lesson from McMartin, but I don't think we have, because I see the same thing in various degrees going on still. And I think it's still up to the individual news operations themselves, whether it's television or newspapers, to really use restraint. After all, we're playing with something that's more valuable to people than almost anything but their families, and that's their reputations.
Howard Rosenberg, thank you very much. Gerald Ullman and Jim Peters, I thank all of you for joining us this evening. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
This has been Nightline.
This has been a presentation of ABC.
Headlines like these have been shocking the nation. Recently, it was reported that more than 100 children were molested during a 10-year period by teachers in a neighborhood preschool. And because of this scandal, increasing awareness of incidents of child molestation have been popping up all across the country. Experts say that approximately 500,000 children will be molested this year alone. How could this be happening to our children? Where do we go from here? Bonnie Strauss is here today to bring us the first part of a series designed to help parents protect their children from this devastating trauma. Now, as I said, Bonnie, the DA's office has indicated that this has been going on for some 10 years or so, and yet nothing had been reported or anything. Now, what kind of a school is this, and how could it have lasted so long?
Well, it is going on, you're right, in different parts of the country. The school that you're talking about now is the McMartin Preschool. And it's a mystery to everyone how it could have gone on for so long. But basically, when you stop to think about the school, it was run by 3 generations, including Virginia McMartin, who was a grandmotherly type. It had won many awards, it was licensed, and it even had a long waiting list. And people just couldn't wait to get their children in. So no one even approached it in negative terms. They just thought, gee, it was a wonderful opportunity.
You went to Manhattan Beach, and you had an opportunity to talk with one of the parents.
I did, and the whole feeling in that community is still one of shock, and the pain is really palpable. We did have a very, very candid interview, and I just want to mention that in case anybody who will be watching this might have a small child in the room. They may want to consider whether they want that child to watch it. But it was a very honest statement from this mother. Let's watch.
Manhattan Beach is a cozy Southern California beach town with idyllically situated oceanfront homes and crisp, clean storefronts. There's a comfortable affluence here and a real feeling of community. The mothers who gather in the local park all know each other, and many families have been here for generations. For 30 years, they've sent their children to the McMartin Preschool, a family-run business whose matriarch, 76-year-old Virginia McMartin, seemed like every child's second grandmother. But that image was abruptly shattered after McMartin, 3 of her relatives, and 3 school employees were charged with more than 100 counts of child molestation. The children were allegedly tortured into silence. The mother of 2 children, who admitted that they were severely abused while at the McMartin school, agreed to talk to us on camera.
What actually happened to your 2 children?
They were tied up, sodomized. They were taken off the premises. They were threatened by watching animals being slaughtered. They were sold for prostitution. There was oral sex.
What did they use to intimidate the children?
Rabbits were cut, the feet were cut off one by one and flushed down the toilet. Turtles, the same type of thing. Their shells were broken off. Things on that order. If they talked, that's what was going to happen to their mom and dad, possibly their grandparents, their brothers and sisters. The children actually were doing out of love for us, because it was the ultimate love. They felt if they went along with what happened to them at the nursery school, that nothing was going to happen to us.
Authorities say the molestation has been going on for at least 10 years and that the children were sold as prostitutes and used in pornography. Last October, a 2.5-year-old finally spoke out after a doctor told his family the child had been sodomized. The child identified Raymond Bucky, McMartin's grandson, as his assailant. The story broke and parents began to search for signs of molestation.
Bedwetting, learning disabilities, children. My one son would come in with wet clothes from nursery school, rashes, very minor, but that can all be contributed because you're a 3-, 4-, or 5-year-old. But still, they were there. When you get a group of mothers together and you all start taking notes, you find out that there's many, many of us who had the same symptoms.
But when questioned, most of the children denied they had been harmed.
My oldest child, I watched when we talked about it. I was watching for a twitch in the eye, a quiver of the mouth, anything that would indicate that he was not telling me the truth. It was not there. It was absolutely not there. On the way down on the freeway to the Institute, I talked to my children. They denied that there was a problem, that they knew nothing that was going on. And then Key McFarland, God bless her, got it out of him with puppets.
Do you know that sometimes secrets are hard to keep inside? And Mr. Alligator might say, maybe.
These puppets, used at the Children's Institute, a child abuse center, gently help coax stories from the frightened youngsters.
The children use them and we use them to let the puppets talk for the children. It gives children some distance from what they're talking about. It makes scary things less scary.
The therapists and staffers also use drawings as well as videotape and a microphone nicknamed the Secret Machine.
We tell them that we tell the secret machine yucky secrets and it eats them. Wow. So if the child has any yucky secrets, that I'm here and the puppets are here to listen to yucky secrets, and the secret machine eats them. And they can tell yucky secrets, and they go into the secret machine and down the wire and into the box, and it makes them gone.
And you saw those tapes?
Yes. There's roughly 5 hours worth of tapes of my children.
Watching the replay of those tapes must have been
hell.
Hell.
Pure hell.
Afterwards, could you talk to the children about it? How did you handle that?
The children still are denying it. They were threatened so severely to keep quiet that they are still denying it. They are talking to a counselor, but they are denying it in front of my husband and I.
It's so easy for people to be critical and to sit back and say, were it my child, it wouldn't have happened. But that isn't the case. The signs of sexual abuse are so subtle, aren't they?
Yes, they're very subtle, and especially in preschoolers. A lot of the things that are signs that we look for as professionals appear to almost everybody as things that fall within the normal range of childhood development.
Many of our children had rashes on their bottoms. And the doctors all told us, have we used a new detergent? Have we given the child a bubble bath recently? Which all 3-year-olds take lots of bubble baths.
A lot of people now are struggling with trying to find a magic solution to prevent this from happening again.
There isn't one, unfortunately. I think you have to, again, go to the very small incidences, like the rashes, bruises on the legs that were very minor, that a lot of people thought the kids had fallen off swings. But they really were, in essence, that wasn't the case. They were being molested.
That is devastating. I might add that all of the information that has been printed, all of the allegations are indeed allegations. It is alleged, and by no means do we wish to prejudice whatever case the DA may have against this particular school. In retrospect, looking back, is there anything, I mean, enough people have talked about it now, are there any sort of red flags that now in hindsight you can pick up that people should have noticed?
Not quite red flags, but one thing that happened at this particular school, and perhaps it happens elsewhere, the parents were asked not to visit the school for the first 6 weeks. Now that doesn't mean that all parents listen. Some would go to the school and they would drop in, but a child would be sent to retrieve the child the parent came to get, so that the parents had no access throughout the school. That's very important. I think you have to be somewhere where you know that you can stop in, you can check. And the other thing is that parents must talk. Once these parents started talking and comparing notes, a pattern was established, and then it became much clearer. So often, we live so isolated.
Well, I was staggered by a couple of things. First of all, the doctors didn't pick it up, but then they wouldn't be looking for that. And the other thing is, if we're so concerned about parents' groups and parents' activities and exchanges and so forth for older children, it would seem just good common sense to have it at this level. It's a shame it's taken this to have us sort of recognize that. Well, this obviously isn't the end of it. We have a series, and in a moment we're going to be joined by psychiatrist Dr. William Rader, who's going to give us a profile of a child molester, and most important, tell us how we can protect our children.
I saw what the system did. I saw how it treated children. I saw how it treated adults. It doesn't work very well. It didn't work for either side. And now everybody, it's a very safe side to be on, saying, gee, these poor children went through hell, and they did go through hell. But I am not the cause of their hell, neither is my mother. Nothing that happened at that preschool is the cause of their hell. The cause of their hell is the product of the adults who took on this case and made it what it is.
How did this case get started? To understand, we have to go back to the summer of 1983, to the mother who made the first complaint about Ray Bucky to the police in the Los Angeles community of Manhattan Beach. She said Bucky had molested her 2.5-year-old son at the McMartin Preschool. And according to the files of the prosecution, she fed the police information about photo sessions involving naked children, trips to faraway places, and bizarre sex acts, stories she attributed to her son. Glenn Stevens was a deputy district attorney in Los Angeles 5 years ago. One of his responsibilities was interviewing that first complaining mother and evaluating her charges. He was surprised with what he found.
She was psychotic when she started the case. She was paranoid. She was schizophrenic. She had delusions. She reported at one point that her house was somebody came into her house and even molested the family dog.
This same mother made phone calls to other parents of children who attended the McMartin School, asking if their children had been molested. And the police in Manhattan Beach, they arrested Ray Bucky, but they had to release him for lack of evidence. And then they sent this letter to 200 McMartin families. In it, they named Ray Bucky, and they asked parents to question their own children about possible sexual abuse at the preschool.
That is the letter that started the witch hunt going.
The letter understandably panicked the parents. So the DA sent them and their children here to Children's Institute International, CII, to be interviewed. What you're watching is a demonstration of the CII interview technique using puppets and dolls. And CII's technique produced astonishing results. 85% of the 400 children they saw, they reported, had been molested. Word of these results quickly wound up on television.
Authorities now believe that at least 60 young children were victimized.
and that the ultimate number could well be much greater.
Reporter Wayne Satz of KABC in Los Angeles broke the story in early 1984. And he reported how the children were terrorized into silence.
And terrified because of what was allegedly done to animals in the children's presence. The maiming and killing of rabbits and other animals, often with the warning that such would be the fate of the child's parents if the secrets were not kept.
The local media coverage set off an avalanche of publicity. In the press, magazines, network news broadcasts, as well as on the highly regarded ABC News magazine, 2020.
Up front tonight, the sexual abuse of small children.
How a seemingly harmless nursery school allegedly became a sexual house of horrors.
My God.
It was after the local media explosion in March of 1984 that Ray Buckey, his mother, his sister Peggy Ann, his grandmother, McMartin School founder Virginia McMartin, and these 3 teachers were indicted by a grand jury and arrested on over 300 counts of molestation, rape, sodomy, and conspiracy.
If you can imagine a heavy woman like me dancing around without clothes on in front of children, anything you can think of. I'm supposed to put my vagina in a child's vagina. I don't know how you do that, but any dirty, nasty thing you can think of, they accuse me of.
While most of the defendants were eventually released on bail, the series of judges agreed with the DA and refused to grant Ray Buckey bail. Only after 5 years was he finally released on bail last March, one of the longest pretrial detentions in U.S. history. Ira Reiner is the district attorney of Los Angeles County.
Why put them in jail?
Mike, what I am not going to do is to rehash the details of the trial. We have a verdict from a jury that we're going to accept.
That's not rehashing the trial, Mr. Reiner. I'm trying to understand the justice system. You put a man in prison for 5 years, his mother for 2 years. What were they going to do if they were out? I'm at a loss to understand why you did it.
Well, first of all, when you say we did it, when I took office, this case was in progress. They were already in jail.
Your office fought any and every effort by the defense to have even a $3 million bail set for Ray Buckey.
Yes.
Why?
Well, look, there was...
Was he going to go out on the street and start molesting children?
At the time, it was felt by the lawyers involved in the case, as well as the judge in the case, that initially bail should not have been set. And when it was set, to have set it very high.
Should he have been in pretrial detention for 5 years? Should his mother have been in pretrial detention for 2 years?
At the time, it was felt that he should have been because of the concern for the kids.
In retrospect, Mr. Reiner.
In retrospect, who can tell in retrospect?
In fact, some of the information the court used to justify holding Ray Buckey without bail was criticized by Ira Reiner 3 years ago on this broadcast. That information came from videotaped interviews of the children done at the Children's Institute. Interviews that Ira Reiner and later the jury in the case described as their #1 problem.
What we had here were the social workers in questioning the children, asking very leading and very suggestive questions of the children. They'd have little Bobby sitting there, and they'd say to Bobby, did the bad teacher touch you in a yucky way in this place right here? And Bobby would say, no. And they would push a few times, and Bobby would continue to say no. Then they'd say, but wait a minute, Johnny has already told us that this happened. Now, you're just as smart as Johnny, aren't you? And after a little bit of this, then maybe Bobby would say, okay, he'd nod his head, yeah, it happened that way. What you have here is a situation then where hundreds of children had been questioned, and then this material is turned over to the district attorney's office. The district attorney then, at that time, without any investigation whatsoever, none at all, turns it over to the grand jury for indictment purposes.
Assistant District Attorney Lael Rubin has been lead prosecutor in the McMartin case under both District Attorney Philibosian and his successor, Ira Reiner.
Were hundreds of children molested at the McMartin school, sexually molested?
Very large numbers of children were molested at school. I mean, I don't see that at this point, whether one says it were 50 or 100 or 200 or 300, that really is beside the point at this point in time. Because what is the issue is that children were molested at this school.
But...
whether there be 2 or whether there be 100.
Oh, wait a minute. If there were 2, then it wouldn't have gotten the attention that it got. And you were the lead attorney pushing this, not just inside the preliminary hearing, but outside in the halls, too, and talking to the press.
Well, what I talked to the press about outside in the hall was, for the most part, about evidence, testimony that had already been presented inside the courtroom.
Deputy D.A. Lael Rubin told UPI many of the children said they were taken from the school to other locations where still and motion pictures were made and the youngsters, quote, were offered up to strangers for whatever purposes, close quote. You believed that when you said it and believe it now?
Absolutely.
You told the press, Miss Rubin, that the discovery of rabbit ears, a cape, and a candle were corroboration of the satanic aspect of this case. Right?
I was quoted as saying that. That's correct.
Still believe that?
That
there are satanic aspects to this case?
We did have testimony at the preliminary hearing about some activities that I suppose one would refer to as satanic.
We asked Rubin why none of the children, their parents or pediatricians, had ever complained about molestation before the case broke.
Do you really think that there are doctors out there who 2, 3, 5 years ago, pediatricians who really were trained to examine young children in their genital areas? Many of the doctors suggested other alternatives or other reasons for pain, discomfort, urinary infections, vaginitis, all sorts of other problems.
Is it possible, Ms. Rubin, that they are better trained to understand than are you?
Well, they're medical doctors and I'm not, but what I'm saying is that not only they, but parents and a lot of other people in this case, we're not willing to believe and accept that, in fact, children were being molested.
And it is this man, Raymond Buckey, and his mother, who are still facing scores of charges of sodomy and rape of children under 14. Raymond Buckey has been held without bail in Los Angeles County Jail for the last 2.5 years.
Why are you talking to us now? You've never spoken to a reporter before, is my understanding.
No.
Why are you talking now?
I think it's time.
Why
I think the tide is turning where people are stepping back out of the hysteria that grew out of this and looking at this. Wait a minute. There's too much here that can be disproved. And we want to see that person. People want to look at me, because I think everybody believes that they can look into someone's eyes, and if I was the monster that I've been made out to be, everybody would have known it.
You never, repeat, never had anything of a sexual nature take place between you, Ray, and any of these children?
Never.
Let me read you what the kids say, a couple. You've seen all of this stuff. Did Ray put his penis inside your mouth? Yes. And did he put it inside your butt? Yes. Did it hurt? Yes.
I think some of the children have actually come to believe it happened. They've been told so many times, they've been reinforced by what they were led to say from the very beginning, that they can get up on the stand and say, yeah, Ray did that to me. Well, how did he do it? What position you're in? I don't remember. They can't give you any specifics because it never happened. To be led to say something at that young of age and to believe the adults that are around you that are reinforcing you to say it, you're going to believe it after a while.
They've dropped the charges against 5 of the defendants. It's only you and your mother who are involved now.
Yes.
Why?
You know, you've got to have a scapegoat. You kept 2 people in jail for 2 years. You're going to back off now and say, oh, sorry, they're innocent too? It's an amazing fact how you can have the same evidence and the same children testifying against all 7, but you can say there's weak evidence against 5 of them.
No, the evidence is not the same. Not all of the evidence was compromised by CII and their process and their techniques of asking leading and suggestive questions. As you go through the tapes very carefully, you will find some of the statements made by the children have a great deal of specificity and detail to them. Many of the statements are very spontaneous. And not in every case did they put words into the children's mouth. There are 2 people of those 7.
Ray Buckey and his mother.
And his mother. That we are convinced, upon carefully looking at the evidence, that indeed they did molest these children.
We know what's going to happen if you're found guilty by a jury.
Yes.
You're going to go to prison for a long, long time, obviously.
If I survive in there.
What do you mean?
They'd mark me. They'd mark me if I'm free, or if I'm put in prison.
If you're in prison, you're afraid that something could happen to you at the hands of the prison population.
I'm not afraid. I'm aware of the reality of prison.
And if you go free?
They've ruined my life. I've watched them ruin my family. I've watched them ruin my mother and grandmother's lives. I've watched them ruin my sister's career. I was just starting at that school. I hadn't made up my mind of what I wanted to do in life. But they burned a scarlet letter on me that I can never get rid of. I don't know what kind of life I would have. I can't trust people anymore because I've seen too much of the politics, the corruption, the evil, the anger, the ignorance.
Nonetheless, Ray Buckey and his mother, Peggy McMartin Buckey, go on trial this month in Los Angeles. The 5 women are free of all charges, but not of all taint.
We all would like our names cleared. And that, to me, is almost second to, I think people have to know what happened here. I think people in the world need to know this was a witch hunt, that nothing happened at the school, and it could happen to anyone. Because it can, and it has been. It's happening all over the country. Because of this case, it has happened everywhere. And if people realize nursery schools aren't places where children are being molested and raped and sodomized, it doesn't happen. It didn't happen in ours.
I believe in this case, and I believe that horrible crimes occurred at the McMartin Preschool. And that's what I intend to argue to a jury.
Convince these people in Manhattan Beach who marched after the not guilty verdict. They marched, they said, to reaffirm that they believe the children, that they believe the children from several preschools in the area who disclosed how they were abused.
We have 1,400 disclosing children in this community. 1,400 children in this community have been ritualistically abused. 8 schools have been shut down. 1,400 children. I mean, doesn't that hit you?
These people are not quite all in kilter. We're talking, they're believing nationwide conspiracy of ritualistic satanic abuse, pedophiles in preschool settings, and gee, we didn't find one scrap of evidence in a nationwide conspiracy to back that up. That's their belief. Every teacher in Manhattan Beach is a child molester. Every preschool that was ever closed with allegations, it's a conspiracy of child molesters. You listen to them and they're talking witch hunt. That's plain and simple, that's what they're talking.
This was a case that involved the molestation of some children. It was blown massively out of proportion to become the case of the century. It was nothing of the sort. It is simply a case of some children, a few children, over a period of years being molested.
Wake up, America. This is your wake-up call. The system perhaps was served, but justice was not. We believe the children because once upon a time we were the children, and nobody believed us.